Recently, King Charles's health has become the center of intense discussions behind the closed doors of the palace. And according to multiple internal sources, it was precisely this reality that led to an unprecedented decision. The throne was transferred in silence, overnight. No prior announcement, no ceremony, no live broadcast, only signatures placed on paper while the rest of the country was asleep. According to sources we have accessed, this decision was not driven by ambition, but by the monarchy's instinct for survival. As the king's health visibly declined, his schedule was reduced, meetings were shortened, and coordination of authority began to fragment. The question of succession was no longer about a distant future. It became an issue of the present, and in that context, William emerged as the only choice capable of guaranteeing immediate stability. What shocked observers was not that William was chosen, but how it happened. According to close sources, the transfer document had already been prepared, activated under emergency conditions, and signed discreetly to avoid any interference that could spark controversy. Notably, Camilla's role in this process was described as unusually minimal. No consultation, no public consent, and no presence in the chain of key decisions. The palace's silence afterward only deepened the suspicion. No denial, no confirmation, just subtle adjustments in schedules, small but consistent changes in protocol, and a William appearing more frequently in positions traditionally reserved for the king. That is how power shifts when it cannot be publicly announced. So what truly happened that night? Why did the transfer have to be carried out in secrecy? And where does Camilla stand in the new power structure now taking shape? Stay with us as we break down every detail behind this shocking decision. And let us know your view in the comments. Was this a necessary move to preserve the monarchy, or the beginning of a highly risky restructuring? King Charles III had just concluded a diplomatic reception lasting 3 hours with the Commonwealth delegation. The moment the heavy oak doors of the 1844 room closed, the diplomatic smile on the king's lips vanished instantly. He stumbled, his right hand gripping the edge of the table to maintain his balance. A violent wave of dizziness crashed over him like a tsunami, washing away all awareness of his surroundings. His breath rasped in heavy labored gasps, and his heart beat erratically as if trying to shatter his aging chest. The head of the medical household, Professor Evans, who had been standing by in the private room, immediately stepped forward. There was no panic, only a terrifyingly cold professionalism. After 15 minutes of checking vital signs and reviewing the latest MRI results, Evans removed his glasses, his expression grave. "Your Majesty," Evans' voice was low but clear in the silent room. "We cannot delay any longer. The signs of vascular exhaustion have shifted to red alert. The oxygen supply to the brain is severely diminishing under the pressure of stress. If you continue at this intensity, a massive stroke is no longer a risk. It is an inevitability." Charles sank into his armchair, his weary eyes gazing out at the steam-fogged window. He understood his body better than anyone. In recent weeks, he had frequently forgotten key details in the government red boxes. Simple decisions had suddenly become as burdensome as moving a mountain. "The Regency Act of 1937, Charles whispered, his voice. "It is a trap. Evans. It only allows for the transfer of power when I am completely incapacitated or in a deep coma. But I'm not dead. I am just running on empty." That was the fatal loophole in the British Constitution. If Charles did not declare himself incapacitated, he still had to rule absolutely. But a ruling king with declining mental acuity was the seed of collapse. He needed another solution, a solution without precedent. That night, as the clock struck 10 p.m., Charles convened a top-secret meeting with the only two people he trusted implicitly regarding loyalty to the institution, Prince William and Princess Anne. The king's private study was completely soundproofed. The yellow light cast shadows upon the portraits of past monarchs, creating haunting interplays of light and dark. "I will issue a special royal decree," Charles declared, his voice weak, but containing the resolve of a man who had contemplated this for a long time. He pushed a handwritten draft toward William. "A partial transfer, William will hold specific constitutional powers, receiving heads of state, ratifying royal assents, and holding honorary military command. I will retain the title of king and the weekly meetings with the prime minister. This is the only way to maintain stability without my abdication. William picked up the paper, his brow furrowed tight. He scanned the lines quickly. It was a bold move, perhaps even reckless. It slipped through a narrow crack in the law. Father, William said, his tone deep but full of concern. This will cause a massive storm in Parliament. And more importantly, Camilla. She will not accept being sidelined in this new power structure. Princess Anne, standing with her arms crossed by the fireplace, nodded in agreement. William is right. Camilla has spent 2 decades laundering her reputation to climb to this position. She will view this as a direct assault on her status as queen. The moment that name was uttered, the air in the room seemed to freeze. The door suddenly burst open. There was no announcement from a servant, nor a knock. Queen Camilla walked in. She wore a deep blue silk dress, her neck adorned with the priceless pearl necklace Charles had given her for their anniversary last year. But her eyes held no marital affection. They were sharp, calculating, and full of vigilance. Camilla had heard, or at least her network of spies within the palace had reported this unusual meeting. William is right. Camilla stepped forward, her voice soft, but carrying the resonance of a command. She walked straight to Charles's side, placing a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that was both possessive and subtly threatening. You cannot do this, Charles. Transferring power to William while you are alive. Are you turning yourself into a puppet king? Camilla turned to look at William and Anne, the corner of her lips curling into a challenging smile. She knew who she was up against, but she also knew Charles's weakness. If the king is weak, the wife must be the one to share the burden. That is the principle of marriage, and it is tradition. I propose a co-regency mechanism. William and I will rule together. That is the balance and unity the public wants to see. Princess Anne took a step forward, blocking Camilla's view of William. Her voice was steely. You are mistaken. Camilla, my mother, Queen Elizabeth, never and would never intend for you to touch political power. You are the queen consort. Your role is to support, not to rule. Do not ever forget your place. Camilla squeezed Charles's shoulder tight, causing him to grimace slightly in pain. She leaned down, whispering into her husband's ear, but loud enough for the room to hear. You need me, Charles. You know that William is too young, and Anne is too rigid. Only I understand what you truly need. The declaration of war had been issued. The battle for power was no longer taking place in the shadows. It had materialized right in the heart of the monarchy. 24 hours after the fateful meeting, London woke up to a media earthquake. A slew of tabloids and online news sites simultaneously ran blazing red headlines. King Charles critical. William forced his father to abdicate to seize power. At Kensington Palace, William threw his tablet onto the table, the dry clatter echoing through the breakfast room. His face flushed red with suppressed rage. The article in the Daily Truth, citing a high-ranking source close to the palace, described the king's health condition in chilling detail. It painted Charles as a senile old man, unable to remember staff names, even needing to be fed. Conversely, William was portrayed as power-hungry, exploiting his father's illness to isolate him from his devoted wife. This is her handiwork, William roared, his voice trembling with indignation. The details about the vascular fatigue were known only to Evans, father, myself, and Anne. She has sold out her husband to buy public sympathy. Kate Middleton, maintaining an astonishing calm, placed a hand on her husband's shoulder to reassure him. She looked deep into his eyes. She is playing psychological warfare. William, she wants the public to believe you are an unfilial son. If you accept the transfer of power now, public opinion will view it as a family coup. She wants to erode your legitimacy. Meanwhile, at Clarence House, Charles and Camilla's private residence, a completely different atmosphere prevailed. Camilla was hosting a discreet afternoon tea with her inner circle, including the editor-in-chief of a major newspaper, two hardline conservative MPs, and her private press secretary. The British public always has a soft spot for the image of a devoted woman, Camilla said, toying with a fine bone china teacup. She no longer looked agitated as she had the night before. Instead, she wore the cold calculation of a seasoned politician. They fear sudden change. William is too young and has a tendency to modernize too aggressively. We need to plant the fear of instability in their minds. She turned to her secretary, ordering, "Leak more information stating that doctors have advised Charles needs 24/7 special care from his closest relative, and imply that only I can understand the king's wishes at this time. If Charles cannot speak, I will be his voice." Camilla's plan was cruel, but terrifyingly logical. She knew she could not directly confront William on constitutional grounds or bloodline. Therefore, she chose to usurp soft power, becoming the sole interpreter for the king. If every decree, every the opinion of Charles had to be conveyed through her, then she was the king. That evening, Charles's health took a sudden turn for the worse due to psychological pressure. He suffered a bout of breathlessness, and his blood pressure spiked. Camilla immediately ordered a lockdown of the king's bedroom area, citing doctor's orders to prevent William from visiting. Inside the room, heavy with the smell of antiseptic and essential oils, Camilla sat by the bedside. Charles lay there, frail and alone. She took his hand, not to transmit warmth, but to inject poison into his bewildered mind. "They want to steal your throne before you have even laid it down." "Charles, Camilla whispered, her voice sweet but full of malice. "William is gathering lawyers. Anne is digging through old files. They see you as a burden. Only I can protect your legacy. Just sign the power of attorney for me. Just one signature, and I will silence them all." Under the influence of sedatives and the persistent whispering, Charles's will began to waver. He looked at the wife he had defied the world to love, his heart full of conflict. Was his son truly in a rush for him to depart? Doubt, like a dose of poison, began to seep into every weakening brain cell of the old king. Princess Anne was not someone easily deceived, and certainly not someone who would sit idly by while Camilla manipulated her brother. With the experience of someone who had served the monarchy for over 50 years, she immediately recognized Camilla's divide and conquer and isolate the target tactics. Early in the morning on the third day of the crisis, Anne convened an emergency meeting with William and the Archbishop of Canterbury at Gatcombe Park, her private estate in the countryside, the only place Camilla's eyes and ears could not reach. "We no longer have time for aristocratic politeness," Anne said the moment everyone sat down. She placed an unloaded shotgun on the table and began cleaning it, a habit that helped her focus when thinking about difficult problems. The action also implicitly signaled her attitude: ready for battle. "Camilla intends to trigger the Regency Clause in a way that benefits her," Anne analyzed sharply. "She has lobbied enough secret votes within the Privy Council. If Charles falls into a coma or is declared incapacitated right now under the old laws, Camilla will automatically have a seat on the Regency Council as the monarch's spouse. She will use that vote to veto all of William's decisions." William rubbed his forehead, his face tense with extreme stress. "But father is completely under her control. I cannot access him to explain the truth without causing a brawl with the guards. If I use force, I will fall into the media trap she has set." The Archbishop of Canterbury, holding the role of highest spiritual and legal advisor, spoke up. "We need an irrefutable legal document. I have secretly finished drafting the decree of partial transfer according to His Majesty's original wishes. This document grants power directly to the Prince of Wales, William, without going through the Regency Council. But we need his signature, a fresh signature in a lucid state and with independent witnesses." Anne paused her gun cleaning, looking up, her eyes sharp as knife blades. "Tonight we will act. Tonight I will use my authority as honorary colonel to change the guard shift at the King's Wing. Those loyal to Camilla or bought off by her will be reassigned to the outer perimeter. But how do we get father out of her sight?" William worried. She barely leaves the bedroom. We aren't taking him anywhere. Anne gave a dry laugh, a cold smile that made even William shiver. I will bring the truth right to his face. William, brace yourself. Tonight will be the longest night of this dynasty, and I need you to bring something. What is it? The financial records of Camilla's son's company and the reports from MI5 regarding the secret meetings between her and the media tycoons. Anne stood up, loading the gun with a dry clack. We won't just be defending, we will attack. At the same time at Buckingham Palace, Camilla received a tip from a servant who was a double agent that William and Anne had just returned to London. She immediately went on alert. The instincts of a survivor of decades of infighting told her a raid was imminent. Prepare the car, Camilla ordered her assistant, her voice urgent, and call the editor of The Sun. Tell them to prepare for breaking news tomorrow morning. If William dares to encroach on the king's room tonight, I will accuse him of attempting to usurp the throne. I will bury his reputation forever. Big Ben chimed 11 times, the melancholy sound spreading across a sleeping London. But inside Buckingham Palace, a silent war was beginning. William, dressed in civilian black to avoid attention, secretly entered the palace through a side door reserved for logistics staff in the kitchen area. Accompanying him were the Archbishop of Canterbury and two of the kingdom's top constitutional lawyers. They moved quickly and decisively through the long, tunnel-like corridors where marble statues seemed to hold their breath. Watching, Princess Anne had arrived first. She stood waiting at the junction of the corridor leading to the royal bedroom quarters. The guards here had been replaced by soldiers from the Blues and Royals, a unit absolutely loyal to Anne. She is in there, Anne whispered, nodding toward the closed oak door at the end of the hall. Intelligence reports that she has had recording devices installed in the room. She wants to trap us. The plan had to change in a split second. They couldn't sign secretly while Camilla was there with the recorder. They had to face her head on, turning the infiltration into a public purge. William took a deep breath, nodding to Anne. He knew the risk was immense. If he failed, he would be branded a traitor. But if he didn't act, the British monarchy would fall into the hands of an ambitious woman. Open the door, William ordered the guard. The heavy oak door slowly swung open. In the dim light of the bedside lamp, King Charles was lying propped up against high pillows, his face gaunt, eyes closed in exhaustion. Camilla sat beside him holding a bowl of hot soup. When she saw the door open and the group enter, she started spilling the soup onto the expensive Persian rug. What do you think you are doing? Camilla stood up abruptly, shielding Charles's bed like a mother beast protecting her territory. This is the king's private room. It is past midnight. Guards, throw them out. But no soldiers entered. The silence of the guards outside was the clearest answer that power had shifted. No soldiers will heed your orders tonight. Camilla. Princess Anne stepped in, the sound of her heels striking the wooden floor like a judge's gavel. We are here to carry out the king's will. His true will, not the will you have force-fed him. William stepped to his father's bedside, kneeling on one knee to bring his eyes level with him. He took Charles's thin hand. Father, I apologize for coming late, but we need to end this right now for the stability of the kingdom and for your health. Charles slowly opened his eyes. They were cloudy with illness and medication. But upon seeing William, a flash of painful conflict appeared. He looked at his son, then at his wife standing between them. William, he rasped, his voice weak. Camilla lunged forward, pushing William's hand away. No, you must not listen to him. Charles, he is tricking you. He brought lawyers to force you to abdicate. She pulled a crumpled document from her pocket, the full regency power of attorney she had been pressuring him to sign for the last 2 days. Enough. The voice of the Archbishop of Canterbury rang out with authority, drowning out Camilla's shouting. He stepped forward, raising the cross worn on his chest. Your Majesty, the Queen Consort. The act of coercing the monarch to sign a constitutional document without the presence of the Privy Council is a violation of the Treason Act of 1915. The phrase treason, dropped into the middle of the room like a bomb. Camilla froze, but her survival instinct rose stronger than ever. She knew she was cornered. She decided to go all in. Camilla turned to Charles, tears beginning to flow. She knelt by the bed, gripping his hand tightly, creating a perfectly tragic scene. Charles, I only want what is best for you. They want to strip you of your power, make you useless. Can you bear to let your wife be humiliated by the world and your own son? Charles closed his eyes, breathing rapidly. Camilla's emotional manipulation still had a potent effect on him. Seeing Charles waver, Camilla stood up, whipping around to face William and Anne. The gentle mask shattered, revealing a face twisted with rage and ambition. "If you sign the transfer decree to William," she hissed through gritted teeth, "I will publish your entire medical file. I will tell the world you have dementia, hallucinations, and that your son interrogated you at midnight. I will turn William into a usurper, and this dynasty will collapse in scandal." William clenched his fists, veins bulging on his neck. He started to step forward, but Anne raised a hand to stop him. She stepped to the front, facing Camilla directly. The distance between the two most powerful women in the royal family was less than a meter. "You say you sacrificed?" Anne asked, her voice terrifyingly calm. "You say you did everything for love, then let me remind you of true sacrifice and of the price you agreed to pay to set foot in this place." Anne slowly opened the black leather briefcase she always carried. She pulled out a yellowed envelope sealed with red wax bearing the royal crest of the previous reign. "You think my mother, Queen Elizabeth, accepted this marriage without any precautions?" She held the envelope high. "This is the Sandringham Secret Pact of 2005 signed by you, Charles, and witnessed by Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. Do you remember clause number 4, Camilla?" Camilla's face drained of all blood. Her eyes widened in horror. She stumbled back, hitting the edge of the table, knocking the lamp to the floor where it shattered. "Clause number 4, Anne read aloud, clearly every word nailing into the air. "In the event that Mrs. Camilla Parker Bowles engages in any behavior interfering with the line of succession or seeks to hold political power beyond ceremonial roles, the marriage shall be declared legally void within the royal context. She shall be stripped of all titles, expelled from royal residences, and receive no allowance whatsoever. She will leave with exactly what she brought, empty hands and disgrace." William looked at his aunt in astonishment. He had never known of this document's existence. It turned out Queen Elizabeth had foreseen it all. She had left one final trap, a self-defense mechanism to protect the throne for her grandson from this woman's ambition. Camilla collapsed to the floor, stammering, "No, impossible. Charles, you said that document was destroyed. You promised me." She turned to look at Charles, hoping for salvation. But the king's silence was the cruelest answer. Amidst the wreckage of emotions and naked truth, something strange happened. King Charles, who had been lying still as a senile old man, suddenly sat bolt upright. He pushed the pillow behind his back with a decisive, strong motion. Looking nothing like a man critical or demented, he reached for the glass of water on the table, took a sip, and looked straight at Camilla with unusually clear eyes. "I lied to you, Borsford," Charles said. His voice was no longer hoarse, but deep, sad, and commanding. The whole room, including William, was stunned. "I do have vascular fatigue, poem. Yes, I need to reduce my workload. Yes," Charles continued, his eyes never leaving his trembling wife on the floor. "But I never lost my mind. I was never confused. The signs of excessive collapse this past week allowing you to run rampant with the media. My silence in the face of your whispers. It was all a test." "A test?" Camilla whispered, her voice shattering. "My mother, the Queen, told me before she passed, power is the strongest reagent for the human heart. I knew you had ambition, Camilla, but I hoped your love for me was greater than that ambition." Charles sighed, a sigh that shed the emotional burden of 30 years. "I waited. I hoped you would tear up that power of attorney and just hold my hand like a wife. I hoped you would protect William instead of attacking him. But you failed. You chose the throne over me. Charles turned to William, his eyes full of apology, but also pride. Son, I am sorry for letting you endure this attack. I needed to see clearly the true nature of those around me before transferring power. And now I have seen, yeah, he pointed to the document Anne was holding. That pact is still valid. And tonight, Camilla, you violated it in front of the Archbishop in the air. You signed your own sentence with your own hand. Camilla sat there dead silent. She realized she had not only lost to Anne in strategy, lost to William in legitimacy, but she had lost the very husband she thought she had manipulated for so many years. Her pride vanished, leaving only the nakedness of a loser. Charles took the fountain pen from the Archbishop. He did not look at Camilla again. Give me the decree. Under the yellow light of the bedroom, King Charles III put his pen to the transfer of power decree. His handwriting was a bit shaky due to age, but strong, decisive, and authoritative. William stepped closer, signing his name right below as Prince Regent. Next came the witnessing signatures of the Archbishop of Canterbury and Princess Anne. The document was completed at 11:55 p.m. Only 5 minutes left until the new day. Charles handed the dried paper to William, then turned to Camilla, who was now sitting curled up like a soulless corpse. Tears dried on her cheeks. You will go on a retreat, Charles said, his voice cold, devoid of any affection. It was the voice of a king ordering a subject, not a husband speaking to a wife. To Scotland, for a long time. The reason will be health. You will not appear in public anymore, nor attend any royal events. Keep the last shred of dignity for yourself. Camilla opened her mouth to beg, but the icy glare of Anne stopped any words. 2 female guards entered, gently but firmly escorting Camilla up. She stumbled away, possessing none of the aura of a queen. The door closed behind her, the latch clicking shut dryly like the sound of a judge's gavel, announcing a death sentence for a lifetime of ambition. 1 week after the night of the long knives at Buckingham, the BBC 6 p.m. news broadcast a global shock. Buckingham Palace has just issued an official statement. Queen Camilla will withdraw completely from royal duties due to serious health reasons. She will move to recuperate at a private estate in rural Scotland. At the same time, a second statement was released. King Charles III has signed a special decree granting additional constitutional powers to Prince William to assist the king in running the country. This is seen as a de facto transfer of power, opening a new era of co-rule. On the balcony of Buckingham Palace, the September wind blew strong. There was no grand debut ceremony, no cheering crowd, just William standing there, alone looking down at London as the city lights began to turn on. He did not smile. His face bore the deep contemplation of a man who had just shouldered the responsibility of an entire kingdom. Behind him, in the shadows of the room, Kate Middleton stepped forward, gripping her husband's hand tight. "It's over," she said softly, her voice relieved. William turned, looking at the phone lighting up on the table. A brief text from Princess Anne had just arrived. She has arrived in Scotland. Gate locked. Key destroyed. William turned off the phone, looking into the distance toward the Big Ben clock tower, tolling the bells of a new hour. "No, Kate," William replied, his eyes steadfast. "It is only just beginning. We have cleared the weeds. Now is the time to sow new seeds. This time we will do it right, with truth, not with secrets." William turned and walked inside. The balcony doors closing, blocking the flashbulbs of the paparazzi from afar, trying to capture the moment of the new master. A true dynasty where honor is placed higher than ambition had officially begun from the ashes of betrayal. As this chapter quietly closes, one thing is clear. The British monarchy is no longer operating on tradition alone, but on urgency, calculation, and survival. Decisions that once took years of preparation are now being made overnight, behind sealed doors. driven by realities the public is only beginning to sense. Whether this silent transfer of authority proves to be a stabilizing move or the spark of deeper unrest remains to be seen. What cannot be ignored is the symbolism. Power does not disappear, it shifts. And when it shifts without ceremony, without explanation, it leaves behind questions that refuse to fade. Questions about legitimacy, about influence, about who truly holds control when the crown itself grows fragile. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this analysis. If you believe this secret transition was a necessary step to protect the monarchy, or if you fear it marks the beginning of a dangerous precedent, we want to hear your thoughts. Please share your perspective in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth investigations into the hidden power struggles shaping the future of the British royal family.